All right, let's talk about some quarterbacks. Traps, I have Kenny Pickett sneaking into the top 10. I still contend he's a second-round pick for me. I like him better than Malik Willis and Sam Howell, who are later in the second round. But I think, I think there's a ceiling for Kenny Pickett, and we can see it. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that floor is extremely high, as we like to say. Matt Corral went third to the Texans for me, and then Pickett is ninth to the Panthers. How do you feel about that marriage, and is Pickett going in your top 10 in your next mock draft?
I would really like this fit for the Panthers. I mean, the Matt Rule era has been really weird to begin. Like all the draft capital that they threw at Sam Darnold, and now they're pretty much done with him. They bring in Cam Newton. I think Matt Rule is going to still look for a quarterback because he knows that regardless of how many draft picks he makes on defense, the team's not going to take off until they have a starting quarterback. And a funny note that I saw, or an interesting note that I saw, that Kenny Pickett once was a Temple recruit that committed there and then decommitted, went to Pittsburgh. And Panthers owner David Tepper from Pittsburgh went to the University of Pittsburgh. That will be the connection that we hear a lot about during the pre-draft process. I'm a little higher on Kenny Pickett than I think any of us. It's not just because of his experience. I think his arm strength randomly, this does not happen often, looks a lot better this season. I think he plays with a lot of confidence, throwing the football to all levels of the field. If he does make a mistake, and there haven't been many, he doesn't turn into a timid quarterback. We obviously saw that he's pretty mobile. He'll bust out a fake slide if he needs to deep down the field, running with the football. He's not going to be a designed run game type of player, but I think he has enough athleticism to be that improvisational type. So like we always say, like quarterbacks get pushed up. Maybe you can use the term overdrafted, but I think someone with a pretty high floor, and because of the ascension he made late in his Pittsburgh career, I think there's a little more upside with Kenny Pickett than a lot of people think, even though he is going to be an older prospect.
So Josh, Kenny Pickett, two questions. Is he a top 10 pick for you? And is there a possibility he's going to be the first quarterback drafted?
Well, first of all, don't get me started on the fake slide. That's going to be an entirely different tangent moving forward. But Matt Rule was the head coach at Temple, right? When Kenny Pickett committed there. Yeah. So that's a very interesting anecdote. Obviously, there's a little bit of history there between those two. Kenny Pickett, the one thing that I think people have concerns with is his hand size, because it's going to be a little over 8 inches. And, you can buy into hand size or not buy into hand size. The reality is that he plays in Pittsburgh and it hasn't affected him to this point.
He wears gloves.
He does wear gloves, but again, it doesn't impact him. So as long as it doesn't impact him, I'm not going to let that factor into the evaluation. But I think you feel a little bit better with him ending up in a warmer climate like Carolina than you would in one of those Rust Belt type cities. Kenny Pickett, otherwise, I think is certainly a top 10 caliber player. He's got average mobility. He's got the arm size that Traps was talking about. I think he's developed tremendously as just a cerebral quarterback in what he's seen before and after snap. So he checks the boxes, in a lot of ways. And I think Matt Rule, obviously deciding to go in a different direction from Joe Brady, which is another piece of this, because we've talked about how Kenny Pickett reminds us a little bit of Joe Burrow, and now Matt Rule moves on from Joe Burrow's former offensive coordinator at LSU. So just a lot of interesting connections between this player and this team. But Kenny Pickett, I have no issue in the top 10. I think he's a very good player. And as long as that hand size does not bother teams, I don't think, I think he's certainly deserving of that consideration.
Yeah, if his hands are like sub 9, that will be interesting, because Drew Lock had quote unquote small hands. His hand size was 9. Sam Darnold had small hands; they were 9'4" or something. And for whatever reason, neither of those quarterbacks exactly set the world on fire. May have nothing to do with their hand size, but that'll certainly be a talking point